What is up, everyone? We are back today. We got a quick post from the Neville sub. This one is called Why the Feeling is the Master Key. So here we go. And I think that people get, well, I'll get into this point later, but I think the word feeling can be sometimes read and perceived incorrectly from what Neville really meant by this, but here we go. Neville shares in the book, The Feeling is the Secret. The medium between the subconscious and conscious is feeling. The subconscious sees us and creates around us that which we are conscious of having, feeling. The reason we must control our thinking and ideas is because persisting in certain thinking creates a feeling or mood. If this thinking is unideal and creates a feeling that's undesirable, the effect is an outside picture of that inward feeling, undesirable. We must become aware of all thoughts and feelings happening us all day long, knowing this truth. We cannot imagine unlovingly all day an expected abundance or harmony. We attract what we are. When I assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, I'm embodying this state. This is done through affirmations, visualizing, or simply feeling I now have what I before desired. I'm impressing upon my subconscious the fact that I am what I desire to be. The subconscious then reflects my beliefs as it always has. When you pray, believe, in parentheses, feel, you have received and you shall. We do not attract what we want, we attract what we are. When you break down why you want what you do, it is always because how you think it'll make you feel. Whether that is satisfied, adored, important, abundant, freedom, loved. The driving force is always a feeling. You do not need outside things to feel how you desire. Neville and Dr. Joe Dispenza have crafted many lovely meditations and guides on how to obtain the feeling, so I won't go into detail here, but we are creators of our world because we can create any feeling outside of ourselves at any given time. This is regardless of our 3D. If we are affected by 3D circumstances or wanting outside approval or validation, it is a sure sign of an unconscious program is again active and we have returned to being a victim. We do not create anything. Creation is already complete. We embody the state desired by feeling as though we are already what we desire to be. To he that has, through feeling embodying the state, he shall be given more. Proof will show up once the state is occupied dominantly and naturally. It is all about the feeling. This is why it isn't wonderful, or thank you, Father, or thank you, I have my dream life works. And you can see this generic, as you can see, this is generic and not specific to a certain manifestation. It is not driven by logic or thought, yet the feeling these affirmations produce is specific and creates all our manifestations outside of us automatically. Manifesting is way more feeling than it is a thought thing. All teachers share this, whether it's Neville, Abraham, or Joe Dispenza. Isn't it wonderful, or thank you, Father, or thank you, I have my dream life works? It works if that works for you, if it resonates for you. I'm gonna read a couple comments and then I'm gonna break down why I think that the word feeling sometimes can miss the mark with what Neville really meant by this. So this is a great post. One little thing I'd like to add about my own experience, during the processes, while the body is up and moving, is vastly different while the body is resting, or sats. There is a reason Neville, Joseph Murphy, and even Dr. Joe Dispenza say to get into a comfortable position and go into the sat/meditative state. The feeling of the wish fulfilled is easier impressed when the body's at rest and the senses are turned off. Seek the feeling of fulfillment using whatever method works for you, and in my experience, the feeling will follow you naturally afterwards. Great addition. Thank you for adding this in. It's very important to get into a relaxed state as you do your technique. Okay. All right, so okay, I'm just looking at the comments here. So my understanding, as I've gone through these teachings over and over, and you see me reading through these Reddit posts, I've applied these teachings, I've learned through so much trial and error with this. And I think the issue that some people have, because it's an issue that I had while doing this, is the word feeling. The way that I interpret naturally the word feeling is emotion. What emotion am I having? And so when teachers like Neville or Joe Dispenza or Joseph Murphy, any of these teachers, Rhonda Byrne, Abraham Hicks, any of these people, they talk about that feeling of gratitude, that feeling of excitement, that feeling of fulfillment, that feeling, that emotion that a lot of the time I've interpreted what they're saying as, you know how I talk about the pendulum and how there's that excited, overexcited feeling, and then there's that fearful feeling, the anxious type of feeling. I think I've interpreted it a little bit like that over-emotionalized feeling, that one, that excited feeling. And it's like, as I've gotten older, I've realized that that feeling of being like an excited child, it's like giddy, I think it has its place, and I think it's definitely not something that we want to like squash out of ourselves. Like, let's say that it's kind of like our inner child that gets so excited about something, whether it's an idea that we have, or it's a project that we're working on, or even just, you know, a conversation that we're having with somebody, or a meeting of the minds, or a meeting of the opposite sex, and we get so excited and thrilled by it. It's a little bit, I guess, like, I don't want to use the word immature, but what it's a little bit telling that perhaps because we're so excited about something, we're not truly deserving of it. It is not natural, right? And now Neville also says that we have to develop the feeling of naturalness. And what is the feeling of naturalness? Well, it's the feeling that I belong here. This belongs with me. This is natural to me. This is normal to me. And so if you imagine yourself, let's say going into a designer store, let's say you're walking into the Dior store, right? And if you're all wide-eyed and exuberant about being in the store, it's very obvious, the salespeople are trained to be very keenly observe this, that you don't really belong here. And you are overly emotionally stimulated to the point where they can see it, and it's almost like the universe itself realizes that by being so like kind of giddy and excited in this childlike way, that you aren't ready for it. And that's something that it's taken me a while to realize, that it's not really emotion. The word feeling, what they say here, and I wouldn't call it feeling. What I would call it is more of awareness. What are you aware of? You're aware of, I'm aware currently that I have my computer right here, that this blanket is here, that I am sitting on this couch right now. I'm aware that there's a pillow right here next to me. I'm aware that the camera is right here. I'm looking into my phone, right? And what are you aware of? Are you aware that you belong? The result that you were looking for in your life is something that feels natural to you, like it feels like a comfortable garment that you're comfortable wearing. Are you comfortable in that skin? And people use the phrase, being comfortable in one's own skin. And are you comfortable? Because a lot of the time we're looking for change, right? Whether we want that change in our relationships, we want that change in our career, change in our health. We're looking to essentially become an improved version of what we already are. Because in order to get a different result outside, we have to change inside. That's what we know, right? Through studying spirituality, through studying philosophy, psychology, we are well aware of this, okay? This is what our goal is to create that inner change, to become that improved version of ourselves, that 2.0 version. And what does that version do? Well, that version is then going to be comfortable with the things, then going to accept them as normal. He or she is not going to be so wide-eyed and giddy with excitement at the prospect of stepping into their new BMW or Mercedes, or buying or their new apartment that they're moving into, right? And so, like, I guess where I would, you know, like this post is great. I just would replace the word feeling with awareness, because feeling, I think it has that connotation of, oh, I need to be super grateful, right? And what happens when we get that thing, when we get that car? You know, I'm into cars, right? And I've test driven some cars on here. I've shown you guys, I've like had access to different cars and been able to drive different Porsches, the Mercedes-Benz, the Lamborghini that I've all driven. And the funny thing about it is like, it seems so crazy before you drive it. Like you're looking at it and you're like, oh, it like looks so sick, right? The Lamborghini. And when I was driving that Lamborghini around, and you guys can see it on my shorts on the channel here, I've like a lot of the shorts feature like Lambo or different cars that I've driven around. And it doesn't feel the same. Like driving it is a completely different experience than picturing it and being like, oh my gosh, it's so amazing, right? Because when you're actually driving it, you have to crouch down to get in it. It's like a little bit uncomfortable. There's not very much space in there. It's stressful driving it around because everyone's looking at you and you're very nervous that you're maybe gonna hit something. It's a wide-bodied car. It's very low to the ground. There's all these things that accompany it that you don't really think about until you actually drive it. And it's the same thing with relationships. It's the same thing with making money. But the car is a great example. Like for a long time, I've really wanted to, like there's certain cars that I've wanted, right? When I was growing up as a kid, my dream car was a Range Rover. And I drove the Range Rover and it didn't handle very well. It was all kind of just like, it seemed better than it was. And I'm not saying this, like I'm using these cars as an example because I think it's a tangible example that we can use, but a lot of the times, and it's the same thing when you get a new phone, right? You get the new phone, the brand new phone, it's got all the new stuff, but eventually you get used to it and you take it more for granted. It doesn't carry with it that same emotional excitement, okay? And that's really what I'm getting at, is like this idea of experiencing abundance and joy and bliss and gratitude is like, I think that that's all well and good, but I think that the true path towards achieving something and in a sustainable way is that kind of middle path. And it's kind of that appreciation without obsession, appreciation without the neediness, without being attached. It's that kind of detached, I want it, but I don't need it type of attitude. And I think that the more that you can embrace that, the more that you can make things neutral, as I made that recent Reddit post was about everything is neutral by nature, right? If I wake up tomorrow and am gifted a brand new Porsche 911 Turbo S, which is another car that I really like, and I think, I think about it, it gets me excited thinking about it sometimes. But then on the flip side, I'm like, you know what? I've driven some of these cars and it's just like, $200,000 for that car, is that really gonna do anything for me? Ultimately, like, it'll be fun to drive, it'll be enjoyable to drive, but then I'm gonna have to worry about the maintenance on it and the repair costs. And I'm not saying that it's not worth it. It potentially is worth it. And right now we have an Audi Q7 that's my stepmom's, but it's having all kinds of issues. And my dad is like lamenting the fact that he got this Audi when he could have probably opted for like a Lexus or something for her, or a Toyota Highlander. It's an SUV, but those Lexuses and Toyotas are known for being reliable. And the Audi is leaking this oil everywhere. And while yes, it's a beautiful piece of machinery and it's amazing, honestly, it doesn't feel like an SUV. You feel that tightness on the road driving it. And even though it's so big, it's almost like magic how they've been able to engineer this thing to feel as good as it does. But there's the flip side. It's always a double-edged sword with this stuff. You have a company that's bigger and now you have more employees and now you're losing money now because you have to pay for their salaries. And it's something it's tough to grasp when you are on the opposite end. I remember back when I was younger, as a young guy in my teenage years and early 20s, to be honest, I've spoken about this before, but I struggled socially. I was pretty shy due to certain things that had happened to me. And I'm not saying it from like a victim thing, but it just was what it was. I had certain experiences with tragedy, like loss in my family, and being pulled out of school that made me very shy. And so I struggled with being social, and then that manifested itself. Then I struggled with, dating, and as a teenager and whatever, I ended up coming out of my shell eventually and ended up having success in those areas. But as somebody who was like hungry for it, it's very hard to tell somebody, because I had a friend one time who gave me this advice. He said, don't, like, you want it too much. And specifically talking about like with women, like if you try too hard, then it can become, you know, you come off try hard, and you come off like if you need it too much, if you need the outcome too much. And it's very hard. Like, I didn't accept that advice when I was in that point, because it wasn't actionable. And it's like at that level of understanding, the advice didn't make sense, because it didn't meet where I was at on my path. You know, I had to learn, I had to develop better skills, better awareness, more experience, until that advice kind of finally later on makes sense. But it's very tough to tell somebody who's struggling in a certain area of their life that, look, like by not getting so excited about it, by kind of entering that detached, disidentifying with it, and kind of like just being, that might give you more success, because you're constantly wondering, well, what am I doing it wrong here, right? But it's funny, because I saw a post recently about some guy talking about like how being a bum, he was able to get like more women were interested in him, like the less he tried, like sleeping at his grandma's house and all that type of stuff. And so sometimes things can be counterintuitive in this way, and that's just, they're all manifestations of what we're talking about here. If you're so desperate for that job, you go into that interview, they can feel it. They can feel that. And while it's great to have the kind of like put out the positive emotions, it's just something to be aware of, that it very quickly can turn into that over attachment to the end result and the outcome. So simply being the solution to this is simply getting into that middle state. And what I would recommend for this is, you know, affirmations is a great tool. You can say, it's normal for me to be this, it's normal for me to have this. And then also just like detaching from like non-dualism. I've heard this come up before recently, but nothing really exists outside of you, or nothing is really, everything is already created, right? Everything is already finished. And the more that you kind of like attach your worth or attach your emotion and feeling, like this word, like this prescribes here, to that end goal, ironically, you can distance yourself from it. You say, oh, once I get this Porsche, once I get this girlfriend, or once I get this boyfriend, I'm going to be, and they say like, feel it in the moment now. But why is that, you know, like, why are you contingent on kind of like, I don't know, it can go both ways, because if you live in the inner world and you have that good feeling, it can work for some people. But I think that a more advanced kind of take on this would be, well, what is it about having this car or this significant other or whatever that's going to make me feel so great? I mean, I can already have that experience. Like, I can give myself that experience. I can, and even do it, like rent the car, go out on the date, like imagine yourself with the person. You know, it's easier to do it with like something like a car, but if you have access to some of these things that you want so bad to experience, that can almost just make you realize like, oh, it's really not that big of a deal. And when you kind of come to that understanding and you have that self-value within yourself that says, look, I'm really the creator of my reality. Like, all of this is coming from me anyways. I'm projecting my reality onto the 3D, and that is what so it's all being generated from me anyway. Then you kind of have that realization where it's like, okay, well, I don't even need this. I don't even need this to feel good. And then you naturally start to convey that right attitude. When you see the car, you don't get so overly excited. When you see the guy or the girl, you don't get so overly excited by it. It's just, oh yeah, you know, I can choose to have that in my life if I want to. And anyways, guys, I hope this is making sense. But I think that's, like I said, where some people get caught up with the word feeling, and how sometimes that can be kind of like lead you astray a bit when it comes to developing the success, getting the results with this, because feeling, just the word feeling in the English language is like this emotion. I think that's how we feel it. And I think it's more of a total whole body awareness of what that is like, awareness of, yes, like this is me, this is how I am operating in relation to the world. The world loves me. The world is looking out for me. Everybody that I see loves me. And it's matter of fact like that. That's why the robotic affirming is so powerful for this stuff. Talk to yourself. Speak to yourself in a way that makes it natural and normal, and instruct yourself that this is normal for you. Look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that, yeah, it's very casual, it's very matter of fact. And some of these examples that I talk about on TV shows can be very valuable to watch, because like I said in previous videos, you watch somebody like Tommy Shelby or Raymond Reddington or Harvey Specter from Suits, and you see how everybody else is getting so emotional around them, but they are just very normal. They're just very calm. They're very cool. Nothing really gets them to frat like this way or that way. Of course, they have their moments. They're only human, and they're portrayed as still being human. And so they do have those moments where things get under their skin. But if you can adopt that type of mentality, it will serve you well. Anyways, guys, much love as always. Thanks for watching. And if this was valuable to you at all, drop me a like, hit me with a subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.